Hello everyone, welcome to the next video. This one's a little quicker than the last, so who would have thought that you can release videos within a month of each other, let alone a few days. But we're just doing Ryōshū's E.G.Os this time. Pretty simple overall. I really like some of her E.G.Os, while others are cool in concept but don't actually end up working. So let's just jump into it. Let's just go right into it. First E.G.O, obviously her base E.G.O. Very strong base E.G.O. Probably the best base E.G.O in the game. You inflict 6 burn, 1 fragile next turn, and another fragile next turn on heads hit. And that is just super strong debuffing. And the passive, it's not a big buff, and it is conditional, but it does work, and it can happen. And it's super cheap, 2 Wrath, 2 Lust. It's a Lust E.G.O, so it's kind of 1 Lust if you think about it. And 10 on Sanity only is really good. This thing is like just super solid and like a 7, honestly a 7 or an 8 to be honest. This one is just a great E.G.O to have, and it obviously clashes high because it's a base E.G.O. I really like this, I give it a 7. This next E.G.O I wanted to talk about while making this entire series. When I've made each episode, I was thinking, I want to talk about Ryōshū, because this thing is really bad, like really bad. But funnily enough, it recently was used for a Railway 6 Section 5 5-turn clear, so I'm going to give it probably like 1 more point than it should, and we're just going to start going over it. It has 2 attack weight, inflicts 6 sinking, and you gain 3 E.G.O resources of a random affinity currently owned. All allies heal 3 SP. Pretty useless, other than I guess 6 sinking potency. And the passive, on hit, if the target has 5+ sinking, inflict 1 defense level down, 5 times per turn. That one's, a little more usable. I still really don't think that's that good. But we're actually going to look at the corrosion real quick. The corrosion has this thing called E.G.O Resource Amp. All allies gain +1 E.G.O Resource Amp. Apply haste next turn. So what happens is allies on a turn will, when they use a skill, instead of getting 1 lust, they'll get 2 lust. Instead of getting 1 pride, they'll get 2 pride. And this actually is decent. It's kind of good. I actually like this part of the E.G.O, but you run into the issue that this E.G.O is stupidly expensive for a Zayn. 2 Gluttony on the sinking team is a joke, especially now where you're not really running Lord Lure anymore. It's super hard to fuel, and it generally is not that good. Sinking again has so many E.G.Os, and this is just one you're probably never going to press, other than in situations like in the Railway 5 or Railway 6 clear, where you have so many E.G.Os to press and your whole goal is to get sinking as high as possible. But I don't think low turning is fully applicable to how I would rate some things. It's got to go on a case-by-case basis, and the only use I've ever seen for this E.G.O is that, and it's truly just to inflict 6 sinking potency. Which, there's so many E.G.Os that do it better. This one's way too expensive to press usually. So honestly, I'd give this a 1, only because of its recent use. But I think it's a 0 if that never happened. This next one, we are going to group them together because they came out at the same time, and they both are meant to be used together somewhat. They have direct synergy for each other, really. Use one after the other. So we're going to start with the one you would use first. Red Eyes, the Lust one. It's Teth, it's cheaper. 20 SP, 5 E.G.O resources in total. 3 attack weight, inflicts 3 bind next turn. If target has 3+ bind, inflict plus coin drop next turn. If target speed is lower than the user's, inflict slash fragility next turn. And on the passive, on Clash Win, inflict bind next turn. 3 times per turn. So, this thing isn't completely useless on its own. Its debuffing is pretty decent. It's very similar to the base E.G.O, if a little more expensive and a little more niche because of that, but its AoE can give it the upper hand in some uses compared to the base E.G.O, so I still actually kind of like this thing. But if we look at the next one, Red Eyes Open, you'll see that, you know, it's supposed to be used after the normal Red Eyes. If main target speed is lower than users by 3 or more, coin power plus 7. If target has 3+ bind, deal plus 40% damage. If the skill staggers or defeats a target, heal user and the ally with the least HP by 10% of max HP. So overall, you know, it seems to be good. You get a bunch of coin power and a good damage boost. Nothing super insane, but it should be good, right? But then we run into the issue that we are pressing E.G.Os back to back. We are using a 20 SP E.G.O into a 25 SP E.G.O, and all of them costing their own resources, which some overlap even, and you're going to run into the issue where you're just never pressing them back to back. At best, you'll press the base Red Eyes E.G.O and never press Red Eyes Open, since Red Eyes Open is not good on its own. It entirely relies on the other E.G.O to do what it does, but it just will never be pressed since it's not good at what it does. The heal is basically nothing. It relies on a certain status effect on the enemy to do bonus damage, and the coin power can be gotten without the other E.G.O or any kind of status effect given, but it just generally isn't that good. It's 7 coin power on an E.G.O that's 25 SP, and if you were using them back to back, you would have 0 SP if you started with 45. It's just like super niche, and I wouldn't even say it's niche, honestly. It's kind of just useless. There's really no reason to use Red Eyes Open. The base Red Eyes is a good debuffing E.G.O. It's definitely usable. It's very similar to the base E.G.O, like I said, if a little more niche. But this one is simply not good. Red Eyes Open is a 1 or a 2. It's way too expensive for what it does. It doesn't offer the player really anything, and it is severely power crept. While Red Eyes, the base one, the normal Lust one, I actually think it's pretty good. I'd give it a similar rating to the base E.G.O, probably a 6 or a 7, maybe a 5 if we're being a little mean to it. Next up on the chopping block is Blind Obsession. Now this thing is a truly useless E.G.O that we've gotten here. Before attack, gain 4 poise. Turn end, gain 2 poise for every unit defeated by this skill. On hit, gain 2 charge count. On crit, gain 2 charge count. On crit with a Pride Affinity skill, gain 1 poise count 3 times per turn. Now, this might seem like a decent poise support E.G.O, and it really is not. First of all, the charge is useless. One of the charge count gaining conditions is on crit. There is no charge Ryōshū in the game that crits. And then the gain 2 poise for every unit defeated by this skill is a on kill condition. So we're stacking on crit and on kill conditions to gain a status, which don't synergize with each other, especially with the fact that one of them is gaining poise, one of them is gaining charge count. And then when we look at the passive, on crit with a Pride Affinity skill, gain 1 poise count. The issue with this is the poise Ryōshū in the game that is super good in spam Pride skills every turn does not need poise count in any way. She stacks poise better than almost any other poise ID in the game. This thing truly is homeless. There is no poise charge Ryōshū in the game to use it. The charge Ryōshūs in the game don't want to use it because it only gives 4, 2 of which is on crit, which is not consistent in any way. And then the poise Ryōshūs don't want to use this because they don't care for it. 1 poise count passive on Pride skill use is not very good, and the poise potency gained is conditional on kill. This thing is a truly, and I need to emphasize, like, This is bad. I don't understand why this is truly made. It doesn't give charge to your allies or anything. Maybe that could be useful somewhere. It doesn't give poise to the allies. It doesn't even give a lot of poise to you. For 6 ego resources and 20 SP, this thing is bad. This is a 0 out of 10. I think this is a completely useless ego. This next ego is one that got recently buffed, and I actually really liked this ego before, and it didn't change much, but what it did change was pretty interesting. So we're just going to start with it. Skill power, +2 against units that have burn, deal 5% damage for every 1 total sum of burn on all targets, max 100%. On kill, gain attack power up next turn, deal burn on targets times 2% of the coin's final damage, wrath damage max 20%, and inflict 4 burn. Now, in its base, it doesn't seem too insane. It's got pretty decent damage because of how high it can scale, but it's nothing insane. 4th Match Flame, though, has always been about the passive. Every 4th skill this unit uses gains final power +4 and inflicts 4 burn on hit. If the said skill is a Wrath skill, deal plus burn potency on all targets divided by 2% damage, max 20%. If the said skill is an ego skill, apply the following effects at coin start of the first coin. If said coin is a plus coin skill, heal 10 HP. If said coin is a minus coin skill, lose 5 SP. This effect cannot reduce the user's SP below 40%. So really what's happening here is every 4th skill, you're inflicting more burn and it clashes higher. If it's a Wrath skill, it'll do more damage based off the burn. And this is the most interesting part here. If you do an ego, if it's a plus coin ego, you will heal SP. If it's a minus coin ego, you will lose SP. So what ends up happening is on, let's give the best example here, the skill spamming ID Blade of the House of Spiders Ryōshū. She uses 2 skills every turn. She has multiple skill slots, making it so you can basically activate this passive every turn with the bonus burn application and final power. But also, she has her own WoW ego that she likes to press. But you can use this ego first, which will cost you SP, but you can still be safe using the WoW ego because of the built-in SP heal. It's very good. I really love that they added this so it didn't become kind of a super niche use, because it's really good. 4 burn on hit is insane, especially if we go off like her final big skill of like Rend Space, where it's got 1,000,000 extra coins. If you kill a bunch of Nurse Fathers, it can be a stupid amount of burn application. I really like this skill, and I really hope we get Uptie 5s similar to this, because the only other one we got with Yi Sang I didn't really enjoy as much. So I give this a very solid 8 or 7 out of 10. This is a great ego. This next ego, it's a little more complicated than the others because it's heavily focused on the passive, and the skill itself is a little word vomity, but we're going to go over it in more detail because of that. First off, you gain poise based off resonance. If you already are at 15 poise, you will instead gain final power, and then the next one is gain poise count based off resonance, and if you already are at 5 poise count, you'll gain coin power instead. And then on kill, you gain deep inhale, and what deep inhale does is it basically takes it to where if you have a good amount of poise potency and count, it'll consume some of the poise potency and deal damage based off how much you consumed on critical hit, and then lose 1 stack on critical hit as well. But then we go here, it says deal poise potency plus count % damage on critical hit, and then on hit gain 4 more deep inhale. See, it doesn't really do that much. It is a slight buff to your Ryōshū, but the more important aspect is the ego passive. And what the passive does is next turn, to start after using the ego skill, gain 1 nebulizer B. If the skill defeats an enemy, gain an additional Nebulizer B equal to the number of enemies defeated. If the skill defeats an ally, gain 2 times the amount of allies you beat, Nebulizer B. Pretty simple. Then you can look at what Nebulizer B actually does. It's a max stack of 5, and this effect persists throughout the counters, so you're not going to lose it on the turn end. When activating Pride A Resonance on combat start, apply 3 poise and 3 poise count on self and allies based off of the stack. So if you have 3 Nebulizer B, it'll give it to 3 allies as well, and it'll prioritize allies that gain or use poise count, and among them allies with the least poise potency. So it is really just a general buffing E.G.O. I think it's a little more niche than the other Thoracalgia E.G.O, since you will only gain 1 on E.G.O use, and the other ways to get more Nebulizer B is on kill. So it's not super perfect. Another niche use for this E.G.O people talk about is its corrosion, where it can kill an ally and will prioritize allies, and you can use that with, say, House of Spiders Ryōshū to kill allies, get the passive up, and also, gain the buff from killing allies, as well as more Nebulizer B from killing allies. So it's actually a pretty interesting synergy, if not usually that applicable. It's still fun. I think a big part of this E.G.O is it's just a good E.G.O for poise. Even if modern poise IDs are getting better at maintaining poise on their own, it still is a great use. It still will make you do more damage for a little bit, and as well will just make stacking poise easier. So overall, I'd probably give it a 7, maybe a 6 if we're being a little mean, but it's still pretty good and can do some damage. This next one is Ryōshū's first Wav E.G.O, and I think it's very good. So we're just going to jump into it. Gain highest resonance attack weight, max 6. Gain highest resonance +1, Gaze of Contempt this turn and next turn, max 7. And what Gaze of Contempt does, for every stack you will gain plus 7% damage. The effect will expire on turn end, and if you have 7 Gaze of Contempt, it will convert into Contempt of the Gaze. And what Contempt of the Gaze does is it will give you 7 protection, 7 damage down, and one of the unit's skill slots will gain 20% aggro. And as long as you have Contempt of the Gaze, you cannot gain Gaze of Contempt, and the effect will expire on turn end. So generally, it's used for a big damage buff at 6 resonance. You kind of don't want it to get to 7 resonance, because then you're gaining a protection and damage down, which is a lot more useless, but we're just going to continue now. If the skill was part of a Lust resonance chain, gain 1 E.G.O resource in affinities corresponding to each of this unit's attack skills. So let's say House of Spiders Ryōshū has a Lust skill 1, you gain 1 Lust. Has a Pride skill 2, gain 1 Pride. And then for 2 turns, lose 10 SP at turn end, classic WoW stuff there. And then on the second coin and attack end, evenly inflict 15 bleed between all targets. So say you're fighting a big boss, he will have 15 bleed, and if you're fighting 6 enemies, it will evenly distribute the 15 bleed between all of them. Generally, a great base thing here. And let's go to the passive next before we go to the corrosion. Whenever the unit uses a base attack skill against an enemy, gain 1 additional E.G.O resources for a random least owned affinity that doesn't correspond to the affinity of the attack skill used 2 times per turn. So if I use a Lust skill on an enemy, it will give me any other sin affinity that's not Lust, which I own the least of, which is pretty good. It will really help you getting sin affinities that you cannot normally get on a team more commonly. I actually really like that passive. But the main course for this E.G.O, after all that yap, is the corrosion. The corrosion will first of all gain 7 Gaze of Contempt, and then on attack end, if it was part of a Lust resonance chain, it will obviously give you 1 E.G.O resource of the affinities corresponding to each of the unit's attack skills, just like before. But then we get to the big part. If the target has bleed, deal bleed on target plus bleed count on target damage percent max 6%. And then you inflict 10 plus highest resonance 0.25 times bleed, max 25 rounded down bleed potency, and then 5 bleed count. So what ends up happening is you can use this insane ability turn 1, Superbia Corrosion it. It will be a big cost on your SP, but then you can use it again. It's only 1 attack weight as well. So say, it targets randomly, but it's only 1 attack weight, so, it can't, like, wipe your whole team, and it could target the boss 2 times in a row, giving them not just 25 bleed and 5 bleed count, but 50 bleed and 10 bleed count. It is insane. It is a stupid amount of bleed if you use it in a resonance chain. It is absurdly strong for that, as well as giving you ego resources for other egos you might want to press later. I really love this ego, but I do think it has one fault, in that it's kind of expensive to press the first time, and you want to be corroding it consistently. Corroding a WoB is very expensive, and it costs a lot of SP, so generally I think it's a little more niche than I've been giving it credit, but it really is super potent at what it does. 25 bleed potency is really strong, and you get the 5 extra count on top. Like, I think this thing is still very good, if a little niche. And people will talk about the whole, interaction with the Contempt Ryōshū ID, but that interaction is kind of really not very good. It will just mean if you have Gaze of Contempt, you will inflict more Gaze, and you will get other buffs if you have Contempt of Gaze. It's really not super strong. I really wish they had a better combo, but they kind of just don't. They really should have worked better together, but they just don't, and it's kind of sad. Usually, you'd kind of run this on House of Spiders and Bleed now, and I think, there it's still great. I still love this thing, but overall it's lost a little bit of value with its ID made for it not being very good anymore, and it ended up not synergizing super perfectly, as well as it being an expensive WoW you want to corrode. So I'd honestly give it a 6 or a 7 here, maybe an 8 if we're in like Railway super late, trying to destroy the boss with Bleed, but it's nothing super insane. Lastly is Ryōshū's most recent ego, and probably one of her best, Great Trichiliocosm. And this guy E.G.O got a huge buff recently with House of Spiders Ryōshū's release, but first we're just going to go over it and then explain all of that. First is gain highest resonance poise, max 7, gain +3 poise count. You gain Entangled Life on attack end, and what Entangled Life does is for every HP damage you do as Ryōshū and Ryōshū's skills, you will gain 1, and it has a max stack of 999. And you will deal plus 1% damage with base skills for every 33 stacks, max 10%. So a little damage buff on top. As long as you got, a max number of it. And then you lose 10 SP at turn in for 3 turns. And then you inflict some burn, some bind, 2 bleed, coin power on the final coin, and then on the final coin you'll do bonus damage on critical hit. You'll deal bonus damage based off burn and bleed potency, and you'll gain coin power for burn and bleed count. And then the big part here is you will consume all of your Entangled Life if you have any, and deal 1% damage for every 5 Entangled Life you have, up to 198%. When attacking a single target, the damage modifier blob is applied at a 2 times its value. In focus encounters, a core, its connected parts counts as a single target. So if you're against one boss, it'll do a big number more damage. And then on the passive here, so when using attack skills, if the enemy is staggered or defeated, gain 1 crit damage up next turn. Seems pretty simple, and the issue before was you gained Entangled Life on attack end, and then the main damage from the E.G.O was consuming Entangled Life. So what would happen is you would need to use it one time, which would be a super expensive WoW use, and then you would need to use it again for the same thing, but this time to get the damage nuke, and it was just not worth it in any world. It cost too much SP and too many resources. But now, with House of Spiders Ryōshū and her defense skill, when you kill a House of Spiders Nurse Father or just random House of Spiders Apprentice, you will gain Entangled Life. And then you can scale off your Entangled Life by just doing more damage, and then nuking at stagger turns or whatever with the E.G.O skill. And as well as House of Spiders Ryōshū having multiple slots, making using this E.G.O skill less of an issue. It's really strong, it does a shit ton of damage, it's just really good. There's honestly not much to talk about this E.G.O. It's kind of a fun little ending here where we just got a really strong Wob E.G.O. that actually does something. So yeah, I'd give this like a solid 8 or 9. This is a great E.G.O. and it's going to be on House Spo's Ryōshū for probably forever, and Shū's one of the best IDs in the game, so yeah, this one's a great one.